Last week, it's gone up to plus 60%. We are living in a stage of volatility, very high vol. Singapore market is back up to about plus 28% as at last week. So does it show bright sparks ahead just because we are seeing a correction in financial markets? I hate to tell you, that's not the case. All right? So up till now, what have we learned? We learned that we lived in a small world. It's like the Walt Disney song, it's a small world after all. There is no decoupling. Countries are actually very connected to each other. Capital flows, trade flows. And guess what? Internet is the glue. We are actually all linked together because of the World Wide Web. Information's coming across to each country too freely. Financial history has a place in this economy today. I'm not a student of history, but I know a lot of you are. We actually found that this market, all right, when things look good, they will get worse. But when things look really bad, they will get better. And I believe very strongly that in crisis, we do get opportunity. The third thing we have learned is big government is bad. I have been working with Michigan, Ann Arbor, and we have a professor from there, Anil Kanani. He was out teaching a program for Ministry of Trade and Industry with me in Singapore last year. And he says, in the United States, we believe only in free markets. We do not believe that government should intervene in markets. Now, of course, Anil came back this year for me, and he says, I've got to eat my words now. All right, the US government is very involved. The big question that all of us are asking the United States government are two big questions. Number one, what is your exit strategy? Okay, you are in AIG, you are in the banks, and you are salvaging, I think, the big auto companies. You're going to come in and help industry, but when are you going to get out? So what's the exit strategy? Number two, big question. GDP, all right, could be shrinking, but total debt of the United States government will be increasing. So debt to GDP ratio, how are you funding those debt? And I think last night when the Dow dropped, it was because Treasury yields jumped up. There was a need to raise more Treasury debt in order to fund the whole bailout. So the two big questions this audience will have to ask going forward will be, when will government stop intervening? How are they going to get up? And two, how are they going to fund the big bailout? And that had repercussions on the dollar, because that's the reason why dollar is dropping across many cross currencies. People are saying the dollar needs to drop to make it attractive for China, for high savings countries to buy up the bonds that is going to be issued out of the United States economy. So what else have we learned going forward? I do not know how many of you still believe in working for banks. Many of our graduates coming out from the university are actually saying, can we work for agri-commodity companies? Right? Can we work for shipping firms? Can we work for logistics firms? Because it's no longer in vogue working for financial sector. We are now back to basics. We need most of the investment banks to be supported by big holding companies which has deposits that have credit loans. So right now we are going to see tighter regulation of financial institutions going forward. Many people are asking, do we need a global central bank? Not a role taken on by the IMF, but another independent central bank to oversee the health and safety of the global financial system. Okay? Do we need a central clearing house for all your over-the-counter derivatives? OTC derivatives, do we need it packed with an exchange such that there is oversight, there's reporting, there's transparency, and there's counter-party credit risk taken care of? I do not know if this will shake out the commodities derivatives markets. All right? But that again is a recurring theme that we are looking at going forward. And then, of course, are you going to see big changes coming out across real sector just because the financial landscape is changing? How will it impact businesses like all of us. Will the banks be much more careful in the loans? Will the banks start to hold back? We are starting to see LCs flowing. I went to Ho Chi Minh City 2 weeks ago, worked with a group of local-owned companies, family businesses, and they are actually saying that in Vietnam, they are very much more happier because the credit is flowing, the banks are funding their businesses, and there's a certain resilience within Vietnam. So I didn't show you Vietnam numbers, but I actually felt the pulse in Vietnam, and I think it's a great place for you to do business. So the way forward requires us to do a rethink of the geopolitics. I think China and US are going to be playing this game of a dance. We will have to look at this dance and see whether it's going to be a happy dance. China has just bought a large equity chunk of Singapore Petroleum, SPC. PetroChina is coming out and bought a large chunk of it. And of course, Keppel, Singapore, have sold that chunk. I think we are going to see a lot of China mergers and acquisition. I think China is going to redeploy their reserves, buying into businesses, because China no longer has faith in holding US Treasury bonds. So there will be a huge deployment of the Chinese reserves. That's about 2 trillion USD worth, and those plans of putting those money to work in order to reshape the imbalances. So we are actually going to see that happening. We think that South Asia, India, Southeast Asia going forward, we are going to have to work closer together. So we are not talking about protectionism. I'm an advocate of free trade, but we are going to talk about collaboration. We're going to see a situation where most of Asia will come together and look at how do we build each other up. So I'm actually very positive about ASEAN Plus 3 and the collaboration that is going to be carried out at the association level for businesses within ASEAN Plus 3. So can I ask you a question, like all professors, all right? How do I know whether we have hit bottom? So I put this question to you. Which industry sector was the only leading indicator of a downturn across all 5 recessions? I know you have answers in front of you. Do you have answers? I hope not. You don't have. Bravo, Timothy. All right, he didn't print the answers. Anybody wants to tell me which industry sector will be the one to look for to tell us whether if we have hit bottom? Anybody? Just yell out an answer. C. Did anybody say C? Yeah. Consumer discretionary. All right? If you are starting to find people replacing their cars, buying big ticket items, going on holidays, then, only then, can you say that we have hit bottom. Right? And I think we are seeing some sparks of that in certain parts of the world, but I don't think we are seeing that in the United States. So people keep thinking about if retail sales go up, that's good enough. I say not good enough. I have to see consumer discretionary spending. Next question. Which 2 sectors always led recovery in the last 4 recent recessions?